In terms of the greater universal concepts of how Dungeons and Dragons is set up, not specific to any one setting, because obviously the various settings can tweak how things are presented, but in the most general sense, there is a relation between the humans, elves, and orcs that is unavoidable because of the fact that they have the largest number of intermixed hybrid offspring between them, the half elves and the half orcs. So regardless of how you want to present their origins or their place or their role in whatever kind of fantasy society you're creating for your D&D world, yeah, you do have to consider exactly how it is that they do relate to each other, and there is room there for like a lot of symbolic expression. Like I'm of the opinion that it's kind of both lazy and inaccurate to try to graft either elves or orcs onto specific human societies. They're supposed to be above or below humans in some ways. Elves and orcs, kind of philosophically speaking, are reflections of humanity, but kind of split through a prism to give you two different images. Neither one is exactly doing everything that humans do. The elves are kind of like a representation of all that's supposed to be the best of human qualities, the beauty, the art, uh, the refined craftsmanship, the poetry, the literature. Also, like, the fact that when they're profoundly good hunters that are wise, and they live in tune with their environment and have great works of architecture and engineering and all that kind of stuff in various D&D settings, and they're ancient and wise. Whereas the orcs are a reflection of everything bad about humanity, at least in terms of how we view ourselves in both of these instances. Because unfortunately, because we are all ourselves human beings, it's impossible to write anything from a non-human point of view. So inevitably, no matter what we do, even if subconsciously, there are elements of this kind of effect that goes on in pretty much all writings about these sorts of fantasy creatures. But in terms of like why one is viewed as good and one is viewed as evil in simplistic terms because of the alignment system. Well, I mean that's why right there. Orcs are supposed to symbolically represent humanity's dark side. It's not that they are a reflection or a denigration of a specific type of human. They represent the things that we find foul in all of us. They're ugly, brutish, violent, clannish, prone to infighting, all that kind of stuff. I feel like that is very much there present in Tolkien's work about his presentation of elves and orcs. And since it is considered to be the foundational document of modern fantasy fiction, it should be taken in consideration at least when you're approaching your world design and trying to come up with whatever kind of historical, anthropological, mythological origins you want to have for exactly explaining, at least for yourself, even if your players never know, exactly why elves and orcs exist in this world, unless you're just going to ignore the question entirely. But if such things are of interest of you and you like playing around with, what you're writing in your adventures and your campaigns, so that you're not just only providing little combat scenarios for people to engage in, but like perhaps, sprinkling things in there that might get them to think a little bit about things without necessarily like hammering them into it. The thing about good writing is that it shouldn't spell everything out. And I think that's a flaw if you're looking, I mean, there's a lot to be said out there for how terrible movies and television have become and blah, blah, blah. Music too, but I don't feel like novels get quite enough heat than they deserve at times. And the modern trend, probably goes back to Stephen King, if not slightly earlier, of these long-winded, over-explained, over-plotted, too many flashbacks kind of novels that we get churned out everywhere now. There's nothing simple and to the point or arcane. The thing about the great books, the books that you can read over and over again at different points in your life and pull different kinds of revelations out of them, is that they all have something a little cryptic about them. There's details that are kind of not clearly spelled out. They're there to be picked up and noticed. And sometimes you have to have absorbed a kind of just a certain amount of just experience living in order for you to be able to see these things. You know, books like Lord of the Rings and Dune are both really good examples. And there are others like that. And occasionally you get stuff like that still out of modern writing, but by and large, like, everyone's become just Stephen King and Anne Rice and George R. R. Martin and David Brin. It's all just everything's too big. We need to get back to pulp writing, just because we just need direct to the point storytelling that leaves it up to the reader to figure out what the deeper meaning is, or to come up with their own kind of ideas of what this mysterious incident in their past they're talking about. Those of us who are old enough remember a time before the Star Wars prequels came out. And do you remember what you used to imagine in your head when you were young about what exactly Obi-Wan had been talking about when he was talking about the old days before Darth Vader became Darth Vader? Wasn't that better than what we got? And isn't that kind of, in a way, kind of the problem with those of us of the older Star Wars generations are, kind of had with those movies, whether or not we were able to articulate that in particular, but that our mind imagery version was better, and that there's, no matter what was going to happen, it was going to ruin it. In the way that, no matter what they did with the Boba Fett show, it was going to make Boba Fett lamer. Keep things vague. But as the writer, you yourself still should kind of know what's going on, so that you could pepper these things in there so that people can find them and figure it out and nibble on it themselves. And as I was saying, if you're looking for something that's easy to do in pretty much all D&D settings with a few exceptions, taking into consideration what elves and orcs are actually supposed to mean symbolically as mythic things, could better inform your storytelling craft, let's say, is a way of putting it. So anyway, that's about that. Hit buttons, smash keyboards, hurl yourself into the abyss, screaming like madmen, and stay waspinated.